Just a heads up, I've only been back for like almost 2 months, and it's like I spent 2 weeks quarantining in Guangzhou, and then I went back to my hometown, Changzhou, which is where I'm located right now. And it's never a big city. Like I think till now, like they only have less than 100 cases. Like in my city, it's never that big of a thing.
Hey everyone, that's Myra Wu, today's guest. Myra is a Chinese student journalist attending the University of Southern California. She recently returned to China and visited Wuhan, the source of COVID-19. So I thought it'd be interesting to hear her perspective on how things are in China compared to the United States. It was fascinating hearing from Myra how she thinks about and navigates the clashing narratives of these two rival countries. Now, we had a little trouble on Zoom, so I'm going to cut you back in right now to where the conversation starts up again. Hope you enjoy. 3, 2, 1, we're live. Myra, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Wow, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the time working with you back in the summer, right?
Yeah, and you're back in China now.
Yep. It's like till the end of the semester, I feel like I need to get back with my family, and my daddy has been super worried about me ever since like the start of this entire pandemic. Like he wanted me back with him instead of staying there alone in the US. But it's actually because of that job, the investigative job that kept me staying in the US.
So your
So
dad wanted you back, but you also had to go home because you didn't have a job anymore, or what happened?
no, it's like my dad wants me back ever since I believe in March, like when we had that stay at home order, like when the classes finally turned online. He's like, why don't you just come back and we can do the classes online, or you can watch the recording, that's what he wanted. But the thing is that that I'm also doing that job, like the production job, like as the producer in the TVN. So that's one thing because that required my entire day to be live there, and I'm one of the leaders, so I couldn't really leave. And then there's this summer job about this investigative journalism thing, which I really want to try out, and I don't feel like I could do it the same way as I did if I were in China. So that's why I told him that I feel like I need to stay at least till the end of the summer.
Yeah.
So
So they
he's
let you do
like,
that, and now
okay,
you're
I'm
back.
all in for it. Yep, exactly.
And how's it been? How's it been?
In the US or back here?
Back there.
Back there, it was hard. It was super hard. I didn't expect to open up about it, but it's like, um, so I'm a junior right now. Like the past 2 years and a half, I've been living with a roommate. But till the start of this year, 2020, my dad was like, "Oh, now you have a job. Like you had to like work one full day in a week, and you need to get up at 8 a.m. to attend to the school at the media center." He's like, "You know what? Why don't you pick a studio and they'll pay for you?" I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love you. You're the best dad ever. And in January, I moved in, and finally I got my own space without a roommate. And in March, everything blew up. So it's like, wow. Yeah. So I've been living alone for months, doing my work and my study. And it's been super hard, if
Yeah.
you are like under a
What's the
pandemic and
biggest
have
thing
to.
you noticed that was different between the pandemic response in the US and then since you've been back home in China? And you live in China right outside of Shanghai, kind of by Nanjing. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, yeah, Nanjing. It's like in between Shanghai and Nanjing.
Yeah. And so how's it been? How would you compare it?
Like the national response.
No, just your
Mm,
experience. How do you
I
think
guess
about it? What are
it's
your
I mean it's
thoughts?
hard to I feel like it's hard to compare because of my time here. Like China is completely back to normal at this time, and it's like there were a few cases in Shanghai, like I believe like 2 weeks ago, and they made it like a big deal, but it wasn't, like we all know. So it's like the experience I had here is just that people would take their masks and they would wear it when they're in public transit, like if it's underground, like a subway, or like while you're on a bus. But other than that, at least in my city, it's like the pandemic is completely a past. And like I said before, it's never a huge case here
So
anyways.
do you think
But
that more people
like
wear masks in the
sorry,
US, or
go
do you
ahead.
think, sorry to interrupt you, everyone listening, we're on a lag, so we're going to have a few of those moments. Zoom's being a little slow. I'm on Wi-Fi, I don't know. But I'm just wondering, do you think that more people wear masks in LA or more people wear masks in uh, China right now where you're living?
I mean, definitely back in LA. Because in the city I'm living, it's like I said, the pandemic is a past. So if only when you were in like a bus or like a public subway, that's when all of the people is gonna wear a mask. But back in LA, I remember that every time I do grocery, like the workers and also like the customers there, like we are all required to wear a mask. Otherwise, they won't let us in.
Right. And what do you think? Do you think the vibe is a lot more chill back at where you are compared to LA?
Definitely, but it's like I said, it's still different. You know, like LA is like an ongoing period of the pandemic, but like for us, it's a past. And I believe that I'm sure like back in the months where like the cases were really high in China, I'm sure the vibe is different. And I always felt like in LA, even though like the people around me were wearing a mask, but like I said, I was somehow located in the area that's next to campus, so there weren't like a lot of people kind of like commuting around that area. So according to the scenario I've been seeing, it's like people are wearing masks, they're taking it seriously. But I know that in other areas or like by the sea or somewhere, it's not the same case like in LA.
Hmm. Yeah. That's really interesting. And I'm asking you, and I wanted to have you on the show because I remember I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw that you were in Wuhan, and I saw one of your pictures in the classroom, and I don't think I saw any students with masks on. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is so interesting. And I got to ask Myra about this. And now I'm getting to hear your
Oh.
answer. I mean, what was Wuhan like? You were
I
visiting
mean,
friends?
it's like, yeah, I was visiting one of like two of my friends. They were both in like Wuhan University, like we were in the same high school. So I mean, it's like I was visiting them, but there's also one reason for me going there is that I'm interesting too. Like I'm super. I feel like the model of the city is super interesting. I was like, I gotta find out. I wanna maybe do like a few visual projects around it, but like I gotta be here. That's what I saw. Like even before I went back to my city, I was like, I gotta be there. So it's like in the university, I believe they returned to normal like back in April. Like they had like a few months of online classes, but I think they were back in class, back in-person class from the end of last semester. So
Yeah.
it's like, and I think the mask is not required anymore in the class. Yeah,
And what are
I mean,
students? Are they
it's
pretty
amazing.
social? Does life, I don't know, how does the social scene seem pretty
Of course,
vibrant?
it's
Like there's a
like
lot more going on?
definitely like the streets I've been to are prospecting. Like there are like shops, no more closed. It's like completely back to normal. And like in the school, it's like just like another day in 2019.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting about that, and I'd love to get your take on this, is that you posted that on Instagram, right? And there's
Mm-hmm.
firewalls. I know when I went to China, I had a VPN, but I know when my mom's friend
Mm-hmm.
went to China, she forgot to get a VPN first, and so she was all stuck outside of her social media. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting to get your take on that. I mean, do all the students just use VPNs, or how does that work?
You mean like the students in Wuhan University?
Or
Or
I mean, do
you mean
most
like
people have
students like
American
me,
social
right?
media, or are you in an
Uh,
elite group of the Chinese students who went to University of Southern California?
yeah. So I believe that we all have a VPN. Like actually I think I had it like I had been on this kind of vibe ever since, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago when I began to like apply to US schools. It's like a casual, like a habit, among us. And we all get a VPN to like get a hoop on YouTube and also take a look, like for me, like different publications and everything around that. So it's like Zoom doesn't really require a VPN, just so you know. Like I could hop
I'm
on
glad we
it.
can
It's just
Zoom,
that
Myra.
Gmail, yeah,
Yeah.
Gmail asked for it, so it's like.
Okay, so that's interesting, and it's interesting because you got all these students. They're all out and about free. I mean, what do you think? Do you like China's response more? Or do you like the U.S. response more? You've lived through both now. I mean, like you said, you didn't catch China, your home country, when it was at its worst, but you can see now for the U.S. it's kind of dragging on. Would you rather be in China right now? Would you rather be hunkered down in your studio in LA?
I mean, that's hard. It's difficult to answer. I would say, I mean, for safety reasons, I definitely prefer here. But if I were to social and spend time with my friend, I would definitely want to go back to the US because that's where like my relationships, my friends, and also my teacher are around. It's like it feels a different kind of lonely when I'm staying in China right here, right now. But like speaking of the response, I guess I could tell because it's like the end of the year. And now it's like I'm back in China. I've been to a few cities and everything looked normal. And when I look back to like what was going on in LA, I feel like there is like a slight difference in the response, like in terms of the policy that the government imposed, like, like the recommendation of staying at home. I think California is doing a good job in terms of that. But it's what's at the core of this issue as like how people respond to it. Like I understand there's all different kind of issues for people, like some could be out of job, they need to get out, or some could be doing like essential work. But it's like if you had a policy on and then you somehow had it like relieved and people are still getting out, shops are back to open like 1 or 2 months later, and now you're imposing a new stay-at-home order, that seems to me as one of the reasons why the cases are lagging and why there's been a huge, like a new surge around that.
Yeah, I'm wondering because for me, I have no answer. If it's really true that there's no problem in China and there's this huge problem in the US, I don't know what the difference is. I mean, if everyone's just out and about in China, it's not like everyone was exposed to the virus and now they just have immunity. And then in the US, it's just dragging on. It's such different societal norms, political systems, everything. I don't know, but there's just such a big disparity. How do you even make sense of that? How do you make sense of that in your head?
I
What do
know
you
it's
attribute
like
it to?
it's surprising to me, like even now, like staying at China, seeing that everything's back in normal. I guess it's also the sense of like individualism in the US, feeling like you don't need to wear a mask to like protect others. It's like wearing a mask is really a thing to like protect the crowd that you're in instead of protect yourself, I guess. But like in China, like I said, there's always been this habit like going on for months, and I believe that like the policy of staying at home might be a bit different because like here we have like different communities who's gonna be like supervising on like whether you're really staying at home, things like that. It could be different.
Wait, so you're saying in China there's like authorities that make sure you're staying at home to enforce that?
Well, you shouldn't put it that way. It's not necessarily like authorities. It's just like because we have like different neighborhoods. Because in China, like the houses will line up differently than in the U.S. Because you should like a lot of like the homes in China are like in apartments, and there's like a neighborhood around it, and then it's like maybe everything. So according to my dad, it's like every time you need to leave this neighborhood, you have to like somehow, like make a mark on your phone. They somehow do it that way. So it's like, then you're kind of like reporting that you're leaving this place.
Okay. So did you have to report when you went to
It's like
Wuhan?
this thing. It's like this thing we did like with the USC free pass. It's like every time you leave that place, you're gonna show it up, and it's like, okay, you're good to go.
Sure. So did you have to report when you went to Wuhan?
No, not really, because everything's normal right now. I'm free to go anywhere.
See, that's what's nuts to me is you're like, and I've experienced this when I went to Asia. It's like in Japan and the subway, everyone wears a mask to be respectful, especially during flu season. And it's so you're not getting others contaminated. It's very respectful. But now it seems like the opposite. It's like, oh yeah, it's normal in China. We're just doing our thing, socializing. We're going to the classroom. But oh wait, but everything's fine. And then in the US, everyone's wearing a mask, but everything's not fine. I guess you're attributing it to like the
Yeah.
people who are rule breaking in the US, and you're saying maybe everyone just did it right and now it's all better in China. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anyone has the one solution, but it's just it's kind of nuts.
Yeah. I feel the same way, honestly. I think maybe it's how people do it. Because I mean, like according to the reports and the news I've been reading, I definitely think that because in China it's like it was a huge case just because like people are more socializing and more crowded in a sense, like compared to the US. That's why it was somehow exposed to like a huge surge. But then after like those, somehow like shutdown policies and also stay-at-home orders, it got better because people are less crowded. But like back in the US, I'm not sure. You're right. I don't know if there's one single solution, but I definitely think like the essential issue is how you respond to those orders. It's more than just wearing a mask for sure. But you had to wear a mask first.
That's interesting. So let's get into some more stuff. What led you to come to USC? Why'd you come to USC?
Oh my god. I didn't expect this answer after spending 3 years here. Okay. So the reason I went to America is because I wanna study journalism. That's like the one and only reason
Why
for
do you
me
need to
to
come
come
to
here.
America to study journalism, Myra?
Well, apparently this US is the one top country where you have like the media and communications flowing around. And back in China, we all know that there are certain things that's in the way, maybe, for me to do the kind of journalism I want.
Okay. So you come to the US, and why'd you apply to
Mhm.
USC? Why in your high schooler, you're 18 at this point? I don't know. When'd you come?
I mean, it's like, because as I said, I've been having like this like tiny dream about journalism, even though I haven't really get a taste about it. So I just, browse around the schools, seeing like whichever university that has like undergraduate journalism program, then that's a hit.
Okay.
So apparently, it's like Michigan, Northwestern, and USC. It's like those three universities, and that's it.
Are you glad you ended up at USC? It's not as cold as Michigan or as Northwestern.
Definitely, it's like California's weather, and also, the flight is way shorter if I'm flying than if I were to fly to the east. So my dad is super pleased about it because he hates long time flights.
So what does your dad do? I keep hearing about your dad. What does he do?
Oh, he does his own business. It's like not as working for himself. So
What's his business?
I think it's more about like exporting.
Uh-huh.
So he kind of like collaborated with one factory, and then he take orders and then export the goods to, I think, Europe mainly.
What type of goods?
It's things around, I think it's like electricity, things like that. Sorry, I don't really know about it.
That's
Sorry.
fine. You got to
Guys,
be
you need to
curious. You're a
learn about
journalist.
what
You're
you
so
guys doing.
investigative, Myra, and we'll get to some of your stories and the Moreno Valley city manager. But you gotta investigate your
Oh,
dad. He's exporting electricity. I don't know if people are gonna buy that. Maybe he's exporting
yeah,
electronics, but I
you're
don't know how you
right.
export
Like
electricity.
some good, yeah, like lights, something like that. Yeah, I should talk to him after
Okay.
this.
So then you got to America. Was it your first time in the United States? I know you're a big traveler. You've been to Europe. You've been all over. Was that your first time in the U.S. when you started going to USC?
Well, definitely not. So I've been in LA one time. Like I've been to the West, like during high school, and then I also traveled to the East. So it's like I've once visited USC, Stanford, like universities around that area, and
Hmm.
then like there's another time when I traveled to the East, just like tour visiting.
Okay. And what was your biggest takeaway when you came to the U.S. for the first time?
Um,
Uh-oh, she's smiling. Are you going to
the
say something
skies.
bad about it?
No, not really. I was just gonna say the weather's nicer.
The
Maybe
weather's
that's my
nice.
first take. The weather's nicer.
Okay.
Yeah, well, actually in LA,
Yeah.
a bit.
And had you been to any like Western European or United States or any countries like that before you went to the US? Because I know you've been to Europe as well.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I've
Okay.
been to a few countries around Europe. Yep.
What's the most interesting place you've ever been?
I've ever been Florence in Italy. I've always wanted to go back.
That's a good
It's
one.
like because the days like the 2 to 3 days that I spent there, it was like a national holiday. So like all the shops were closed and there weren't like a lot of people outside, and I feel like I didn't really enjoy the true vibe around that. So I've wanted to go back to the city another
Yeah, I
time.
love Florence. The food's so good. My mom's taught as a professor there in Florence.
Wow.
A university teacher. So that's been amazing. The food's amazing. The city's
Is that
beautiful.
something about art? What's she teaching? Is
She
like
teaches
arts
communication.
or
She
something like
teaches
that?
communication, not
Okay.
art. But
All right.
I'm sure they touch on art a lot. Go to all the museums, the Uffizi, whatnot. So,
Yeah. 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 I
so I gotta
know.
ask you. I'm gonna tell you a little story. So
Mhm.
when I did study abroad, there were a lot of Chinese students, right? And I remember because we were in a
Mhm.
history class, and the subject of Tiananmen Square came up, and we had this big discussion, and there was basically a rehashing of history of what exactly Tiananmen was, and was this the facts or was this the facts, right? You have two different narratives, and you're familiar with that as a journalist. You can go read a conservative news site and you can get this narrative on Trump, or you can go to BuzzFeed with our man Mark Schuss and get a different narrative on Trump. And so I'm curious if you, when you first came to USC, did you have that what I would call a Tiananmen moment where there was sort of a narrative clash? I mean, it sounds like that's what you came to the US for, was that journalism and to investigate and find out truth. Was there that clash where there was something where you're like, ooh, I don't think of it that way? I don't know if you've had to take any history classes or there's been anything like that, but
Yeah, I think I kind of felt like what you're trying to get out of me here. But I guess it's like as I said, I've always been interested in journalism, and I have been like reading around like different publications in the US even before I went there. So it's like I guess for the things like in the history, I've always been taking like a critical perspective on both sides, you know, like whether those are like things from like the US or those are like contexts that's on my history book, you know. There is a difference for sure, maybe a huge difference, but I've never been like a true believer for either side, you know.
oh, so
So
you're the ultimate skeptic, Myra.
I guess because like you don't have like a recording, you know, you don't have a recording back then, and you don't have like a firmly kind of like context of like both sides, what they're trying to get out of it. I believe that even when we were in that moment, the US should have a different take from Beijing. Otherwise, why are we two countries, right? So it's like I've always been not that into politics, and because of this, I guess, this disparity in the two countries. But yeah,
Okay.
and as of like the response, like like what you said about like this narrative clash, you know, I think I've had some of those, not necessarily in like historical events, but maybe something about the virus, like along the year. maybe I've been feeling some of those because of the COVID kind of like blowing up in the China, and from what I've reading on like social media in China compared to like what American people were talking about it like back in January, like when this thing hasn't really blown up in the US, when like in the national when like the national focus was put in Wuhan, maybe I felt those kind of a bit clashes on that.
So give me an example. What did you feel? Be specific.
I guess it's like according to what I'm reading on the social media, it's like things may be getting better in China, and then but somehow like the entire world was focusing on like how severe policy they input to the city in terms of like a way to shut the virus down. But they like now looking back, we all know that maybe that was the correct way to do it. But somehow at the moment, the US was being like a huge criticizer on that.
Oh,
It's
you're
like,
saying the US, I remember this. Are you referring to like, oh, locking people in their homes and then them dying,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
people in the US being like, oh wow, they're like violating people's human rights and this is so evil and like we're so much like morally above this?
yep. But
Like people's
not that's not the
attitudes like, oh,
same.
I'm better than you, or like, oh, I have a better like we are the good people and you're the bad people type of thing.
Well, not necessarily that, but
Well,
yeah,
there's a
some
moral
somewhere
judgment
around
though.
that.
There's a moral judgment in the sense that
Yeah.
if you're saying, "Oh, I'm the person with human rights," like I would never lock someone in their home to die or something. Like that's terrible. You know what I'm saying?
And the phrase like lock people in their homes to die is not the correct thing to describe it.
Right, but do you think that's how the media framed some of it? Am I correctly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to like national things. Like I feel like I mean, like New York Times to me has always been like a huge supporter around that, you know, like moral judgment, like you said, when it comes to like issues in in China. So
So do you feel like Chinese people feel very judged by the New York Times?
I mean, they judge American people by their own publications. So like I won't say I mean I like to me it's like either is not doing their thing. It's like Chinese publications are saying that now the US people are dying and they're left alone in their home. And like a few months ago I've heard the same kind of things like going on New York Times. I'm like, okay, so what? It's like every time when someone turned to me and saying like, oh Myra, you're a Chinese kid and now you're studying journalism, like what's your take on this thing? Like is China really that way? Are people really locked there, like dying themselves? Like my response is always like, oh, Chinese people think of you guys as the same way. So it's like, what?
No, you should say I don't have a recording, so I don't know if it's true. I'm skeptical of both.
Oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah, because you are, right?
Yeah, that's when you answered it.
I don't know. Your generation's fascinating. You all have VPNs. You said you've had a VPN for 5 years. You're going to travel. You're hanging out with your friends in Wuhan during the pandemic. I guess it's not a pandemic in China anymore. I mean, how does your generation think about politics? I mean, you say you're not into politics, but there's a practical aspect of it. You know, on this interview, you said, because we know there are some things that make it difficult to do journalism. So, I mean, you at least acknowledge it, even if you don't want to live in that world. How is your, tech savvy smartphone holding generation navigating that?
I guess as of my generation, we always take an eye on like the politics inside as well as like the national things around it, especially when you are traveling around or like as for me, like I work to study in the US, right? Then you definitely need to get and take on like the relationship in between the countries and also the different kind of narratives that you'd expect to be hit maybe or may not in the city in that country. And then it's like for me, I'm also like a journalism major. I had to navigate along the US politics for sure, because like whatever beat or whatever stories that I'm going for is like politics is always a huge element in that. So I guess I would say for me we are pretty, I guess the generation is definitely like more into politics than ever, I'd say. Even though like we seem like we are like, yeah, maybe like the social media savvy way, but it's like you can get politics news from that. It's yeah, I think we're definitely more into it compared to before.
If I was a critic, I'd say it's the he said, she said generation, because you say, oh, China said this about the US said this about China. But I've only really like connected with Chinese students who have been to the US, who are very aware of the narratives on both sides. It just seems like I haven't felt, outside of that little experience on my study abroad where a lot of the students really challenged the mainstream view on Tiananmen, was that that it's really sort of ambivalence. It's like, well, there's this narrative and there's this narrative, and I'm not really gonna get in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I guess the reason for that is maybe because that everyone realized that politics itself is already like a hardcore issue. And if you're doing it like in between countries, and if you're working on an issue somehow in the shadow of the difference in the two countries, then that's more difficult, you know?
And would you
And
say
it's
you're
like I
asking
never.
for trouble? You're asking for trouble for yourself a little bit if you get in the middle of it?
Sorry, would you repeat that?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, do you think also that it's maybe you're just asking a little bit for trouble if you take a side on on those narratives?
Kinda, I guess, kinda. And that's why like people are avoiding it in a sense, you know? And like I said, I would I would I would love to leave politics out of my story if
Of
possible.
course. I get that. And you're saying that's a big reason why?
I guess so. I'm not sure because I've never been like in part of it, but maybe.
Okay. So tell us about your Moreno Valley story you did this summer. Let's get a sense of what type of journalism Myra does.
Oh my God. All right. So it was an investigative story. And as of how I found out the pitch, it was just that you know, Keith, he suggested that, oh, since we're working on this investigative stories, would you like to somehow look into like a few city managers around LA area and to see like whether they get like unexpected high payouts throughout the year, and then maybe there's a story. So like this city manager Tom DeSantis was one of them, and that's why like I turned to like do those PRA requests, and we somehow get his real payouts over the year. But the strange thing is that he announced retirement in 2019, at the end of 2019. Then why is this guy getting so much payouts throughout the year of 2020? That's kind of like how
So he's retired, and how much
story.
money is he getting?
I think it's like till the day like we published the story, it was like over 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 50 over 50,000. So it's like kind of like the his year salary, I believe. Like his annual salary would be something around that, but he announced retirement back in 2019.
50,000 or
And
500?
no,
More than
50,000.
50,000?
Yep.
Oh, I thought it was a lot more than that, but okay. I thought I read it and it
Yeah,
was
but
more money than
that's
that. Potentially,
yeah,
right?
but it's like a tiny city town, you know, so it's not really that much. Yeah.
But he's getting paid after he's already been retired. So you're navigating into the middle of a conflict here, Myra. You're getting yourself in between two different narratives. I thought you said you don't like to do that. You're getting yourself in hot water.
Kinda, I guess. Yeah, it was hard like along the way, but apparently like at the end, the reason that we got a story out and the reason that he actually sent back an email talking about this, but like the reason that we are like all for it about this story is just that the document says it's on, like the documents already sets all the evidence, you know, like saying how much money he's getting and how much money he was supposed to get like back in the year when he was working.
And so what happened? Is he still getting money every day? I mean, that's one of the craziest things as an investigative journalist people should know, is you can find the craziest thing and everyone might just shrug their shoulders and be like, well, whatever.
I know, right?
Isn't that nuts? How do you feel about that?
I'm like, I'm not sure. what I'm feeling. I guess the reaction was like, oh, that's a lot of money, and this guy is retiring, but somehow he has this secret deals that would cap him like on the payroll for another year, and maybe he's still on it. Who knows? And the reason is that the city itself, like according to my sources, maybe those like I didn't really quote in the story, according to my sources, it's because that the city itself was super corrupt. And it's been the way maybe for the past decade. And it's like some of the like extremists would say like in the city, like they have their own like citizen journalism thing, like citizen journalism, like a website on it. And they would say like there are a few members in the city council somehow like control the entire budget and they were doing evil things, stuff like that. But I didn't really have time to, you know, like dig more into it because I had my own business and then there's like another semester opening up. Otherwise I would do a follow-up, but it
Right.
didn't end up that way.
I just think that's one of the craziest things as a journalist. You had the documents, you had that this man is being paid, and it's you can go to the story, go to LAS, type in Myra Wu, read the story, and you can see, hey, there's these documents, you click it, he's getting paid after he's retired. It's not really supposed to be that way. They game the system, and then nothing really happens, right?
Yeah.
That's happened to me with investigative stories too. And
I know, right?
I'm curious how you feel when it's like, wow, we had this finding, we had this reaction, and then I guess what it is what it is. I mean, where do you get your energy from? Do you get your energy from the search and the investigation? Do you get your energy from the findings? Are you disappointed that nothing really came of it? How do you think about that?
I think I was a bit like triggered along the way because I was doing these kind of like interviews with citizens around it, and they have like Moreno Valley politics kind of like Facebook groups all around it, and it's like ever like almost everyone almost everyone in the community, like outside of like the government side for sure, like almost everyone I talk to in the community are suggesting or they are implying that the city has been that corrupt, and they're like, oh my god, finally we have an investigative journalist for us, even though she's only a student at USC. But you know what, why don't we trust her and somehow give her the things that we know to finally expose the city? That's kind of like the vibe I've been feeling around like the residential side. But when I came to like the authorities and also like employees around this guy and also like the current council members, that's definitely not the same case. But I guess those kind of responses somehow support me along the way as I was trying to find out the truth or somehow confirm what they've been implying for the past few months. I guess it's like everyone knows this thing is going, but they're not sure about it. Maybe I was the one to find the evidence and somehow confirm it. So I actually I think I resent this story to the Facebook group, and also I sent it out to like every source that I've talked to in the community. And I believe that there used to be like a tiny discussion around it, but then it's like a stone in a pod, that's it.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting what actually happens from the findings of an investigative journalist. So what's your goal as a journalist? What do you want to do?
For me, I guess investigative journalism was a try, but maybe in the future I want to do something on broadcast. More of like the production side. Yep.
Okay.
More on visuals, less writings, I guess.
And where do you want to do that? You doing that in China, the US, Europe? Where are you going?
I guess the goal is to work in the US because that's where I learned all my knowledge and that's where they should be applied. But we don't know. Yeah, it depends because as an international, you need like sponsorship to finally get a job there.
What do you mean by should be applied? Why should it be applied in the US? Why can't you use it somewhere else?
I'm not sure because like it's like the journalism system that I'm used to, you know, like in the US, there could be, I mean, like the ASICs are the same for sure, but like the way I'm used to do it, like I was doing it in the student newsroom in terms of broadcast because there's a lot of like systematical issues and also like technical stuff that you need to follow. And as I know, that's been the same kind of model in a lot of the US newsrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was suggesting that, I guess.
Gotcha. It's just a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you've got a year left. Are you going back to the US to finish up the degree, or are you going to finish up in China?
Well, because I still have a year up, I'm not sure, but as of right now, I'm definitely not going back. It's like I wanted to go back for sure because it feels weird if you're doing journalism, like if you're doing like US news in China. And I had to stay up late for my job. It's like not the kind of like habit or like the schedule I would love to have now. So it's like, but my dad was super worried about condition over there, and he won't. He's like, until a vaccine is issued out and everyone's kind of like already taken it, I'm not letting you go back. So I guess the current plan is that I won't be back until March.
Yeah. That's such a good little example of what you're talking about between the narrative wars. Like an American family would be so scared to let maybe just the average American family would be so scared to let their kid go to Wuhan, even though you're saying it's completely safe right now. Not completely, but people are walking around without masks. It's, back to normal. You said, quote, I think you said it's back to normal and prosperous. I like the prosperous, but,
Exactly.
whereas your dad's like, I'm not going to let her back to the US. It's crazy over there. And that's that narrative
Well,
clash we were talking about.
a huge, like a tiny take on that is he was not pleasant when I was saying that I'm going to Wuhan either. Yeah, he's like, why don't you? He's like, maybe give it another shot. I was like, Dad, I have to go there, okay? But yeah.
But he let you go to Wuhan. He's not letting you go to the US until there's a vaccine. So that says something.
Yep, exactly.
Listen, I got to ask you because I went to a different school for my undergraduate, and then I came to USC for my master's in journalism. And when I got there, there's a lot of Chinese students. Maybe my other school just wasn't that good, so no Chinese students wanted to go there. But I'm wondering, why are there so many Chinese students at USC? What's the story on that? You hear the rumors, but I want to know the truth from you. What's the real reason?
Yeah, like the rumors. Oh,
No,
you
the
said it.
rumors just that they
Okay.
get admitted because they pay full price, right?
Well, I mean, like, wasn't that like the same thing for like American students? Because USC is like a private school, and like the price they charge us are like the same they charge other American
Yeah, I don't know.
kids.
I'm just saying that's the rumor I heard. So, what's your take
Okay.
on it?
I guess I feel like a lot of these like privileged schools will love to take international kids just because, like you said, they pay full prices. And then as I from what I know is like the master's program and like the International Academy of USC, they're like getting a lot more money for like USC to stay along, I guess. But as of Chinese kids, for me, that I know that I went here just because of the journalism program. But like for other kids, I don't. You know what? I don't feel like I could speak for them. But I guess, as you said, USC is one of the top schools in the US, and when we are applying, it's like you got to go to the top, right? Like
You're
if you are
ambitious.
applying, yeah, exactly. If you're applying to a school like in a different country, why would you want to go? Like not to say like the community college is not that good in a sense, but it's like I guess for Chinese kids who are trying to apply, maybe they prefer like private constitution, the ones with like a higher range on like the high with like a higher place in the range in the national range, and then maybe that's the case.
Yeah, that's really interesting. All right, I got to ask you one more, Myra, before I let you go. You can ask me anything
Cool.
too at the end here. You can flip the tables on me, do your thing. But I got to ask you, what was it like as an outsider with the whole presidential election, the Donald Trump thing? I just got to get your take because you know that a lot of the students at USC are very liberal. They hate Donald Trump. And as an outsider, you've got to, but also a lot of them are very critical of Xi. They're very critical of China. So I just got to get your take on like, how you think about that. You're like, everything's chill, no need to freak out, or you're like, yeah, this guy's the worst. Where are you on that spectrum as an outsider?
I think I'm more liberal than you expected. Because it's like the 3 years in USD definitely changed me in a sense. And also that we are in the state of California. Like, come on.
Okay, so you really just
Yeah,
embrace the lifestyle.
kinda, I guess. And it's also,
And you
I
embrace
guess
the
there's also
ideas.
yeah, a bit. And it's also like a lot of our professors, in Annenberg, they are like super open about it, like in terms of politics and how they want to talk about it in their class. So it's like, yep, of course. And also, because I'm also a journalist working on this, and it's like maybe some of his actions and his words really set like a huge obstacle for reporters to do their job.
Hmm.
So I feel like that's the kind of spectrum, or like the way that he's doing things is something that as a journalist I want to stop, in a sense, to protect like our industry and also our rights, in a sense, because I feel like
Hmm.
if that's something to be allowed, and even though like he won't be like the next president elect, if that's the kind of vibe that we are allowing in the media and the communications world, maybe that's not the kind of industry I want to step in post graduation. That's just how
Mm.
I've been feeling, like in terms of my career, like my future,
Yeah, so
like
that's you
super
now, but you said you changed a lot over the 3 years. Well, how'd you change over those 3 years from when you got to USC?
I guess I guess
You were
I
like a
I
blank
came to
slate when you
be
came in, right? You were a blank slate. And then
kinda,
all the professors
maybe.
wrote all over you what to think, Myra. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I guess the change is that I became a lot more liberal, as I said. It's because of like the professors in Annenberg, and also what Trump has been doing, and especially the relationship between the two countries. And that's been something that's kept me outside of US. That's why we cannot meet in person, right? So I mean, on that sense, I'm definitely like more liberal than I used to be.
Hmm. And then does that carry over to how you think about China now as well?
Like in terms of, I guess, a bit. Yeah. But it's hard to, like I was trying to like kind of avoid politics in my answers, but I guess yes. I'm getting a lot more liberal on both sides, whether it's like in terms of US or my view on the China, like all those kind of social issues around there. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because you said with Donald Trump, I don't necessarily want to go into journalism if he's going to make my job harder. Obviously, you know where that can go with the narrative clashes. You can flip it and say, well, that could apply to China as well. So very interesting. You have any questions for
Yep.
me?
For you, how are you doing? Like
Okay.
seriously, how are you doing?
Seriously. I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I'm disappointed. I don't have a job right now. I'm looking for a job, but I'm happy. I'm in Southern California. It's got to be one of my favorite places in the world. I've had some good surfing. My friends are at home. I'm able to visit them. Sometimes we have COVID scares. Got to get tested. I haven't caught the virus, but some of my family members have. But I'm good. I'm
Sorry.
good. I would be worse if I was still in school. It sounds like it would be a frustrating process. I don't know. How are online
Yeah.
classes for you?
Um, I would never want to do it again. Honestly, that's what I've been telling my dad. I feel like my last semester was like, what did I learn? I was just trying to get it passed. And I know that it's been the same kind of vibe around my friends. So yeah, it's definitely better if you're outside of school.
Yeah, I'm not missing out on it. It just seems like so much time on the computer, so much time when you know what it's like to be in the classroom. And we do have great professors and we have great training and we have the media center. And you mentioned all the technical stuff for broadcasting, all the equipment. It's like you don't want to go to online school, especially if you're a social person. You like to talk to people, you like to interact, you like to be a journalist. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
you're a little bit in isolation.
Kinda, I guess, a bit. So that definitely affects. And I feel like in 2020, a lot of people are going through the same kind of process. That's why I wanted to check in to make sure you're all good around it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, I
Right.
appreciate it, Myra. It was a great podcast. I hope people enjoy it. And I got to ask for the last thing, your tagline on Instagram, "The moon is coming for you." What's that
Yep.
all about?
Um, I guess I guess what I'm trying to like confirm about the phrase is just that while you keep running, keep working on your things, maybe something you're looking for will come along the way as you're working hard.
I like it.
Even though
Ladies
I
and
don't
gentlemen.
necessarily know what that thing is. It's like the moon in the sky. But
Yeah,
you are looking towards it and then it's gonna go. Yep.
I like it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Myra Wu. Thank you for listening.